Do you remember an incident in the market where a consumer surprised you?
Well, there have been umpteen such cases. The beauty of working in out in the markets is that you are forever disabused of all the grand notions that you have sitting in air conditioned offices. I remember very early in my career, I was area sales manager in Punjab for detergents, soaps and detergents in Hindustan Lever. And
Okay,
I remember, going with Vim Popular. We used to have a surfactant called Vim Popular. And I
right.
was out in the marketplace and we were doing a sampling drive. And a lady asked me in fluent Punjabi as to
Huh.
why it was better than ash. So
Okay,
I gave her all kinds of reasons. And then she said,
okay,
what if I dose the ash with a handful of detergent? So then I again gave her some reasons, all reasons which I thought were right. There was a
okay,
person from the then Hindustan Lever Research Center who later in the journey back to the town said she was absolutely right. When you have ash, it is alkaline, it's dead and bacteria free. With elbow effort, it has just the right amount of friction. And if you dose
okay,
it with detergent, it does just the job that it does. So then I went back to the sales officer and I said, maybe I missed telling her it has mild perfume. He said, well, in Punjab, when we like to eat our food, we like to smell our food, not the perfume. So, you know how if you're wearing a marketer's hat and if you read your brochure wear too seriously, you can be very removed from the realities. And that's what taught me that, that lady in heart of rural India has a very keen eye for appreciating the value that a brand brings to you. And she is forever measuring that. That's the essence of value, not what you say on the pack, not what you say in your advertising, but experientially does she feel that it is different. And by the way, for the record, it was a bumper hit success. Vim was a market leader and all of that, but her query remained with me for a very long time.
great. What does a global marketing role involve, and how does one grow into it? Our guest for today, for episode 150, is perfectly placed to answer that question. Shubhranshu Singh is a member of the board of directors of the FE Lions Foundation. He's one of Forbes' most influential global CMOs in 2025. He has served as the global chief marketing officer of Tata Motors and was earlier global head of marketing and brand for Royal Enfield. Apart from early stints at Hindustan Unilever, which is one of the best learning grounds, he's a columnist, speaker, thought leader, and acknowledged creator of category leading brands and platforms. He has launched, renovated, and grown some of the most iconic Indian and global brands. As marketing director of India and South Asia at Visa, the world's leading global payments company, he has led marketing, communication development, research, and activation for the entire Visa portfolio. So, we couldn't be happier to get a person of his stature onto the program today. My name is Venugopal. I head Ideascape, and every week we go through career journeys of different kinds. And today we have someone who's really defining what global marketing is all about. So let me welcome Shubhranshu. Such a
Thank
pleasure
you
having
very
you on the
much.
show, Shubhranshu.
Likewise, Venu, we've been discussing this for a very long time. I think I had the luck of the draw. 150th is a great number to get on board. You've been doing a fabulous job. I congratulate you and
Thank
wish
you.
you all the very best.
Thank you very much because it's stories like yours that help people understand what it is to grow a career and to understand what you're good at. So let me go back to where you began. So, what were some of the early career options that you considered?
Well, as a matter of fact, like most good students in India, I got into the shoot for, getting into a science-based high school education. And then after that,
Okay,
it was almost the norm to become an engineer. So I went to the Birla Institute of Technology. I did my
right.
bachelor's in electronics and communications engineering. I was very clear by the time we were in third year that I wanted to do sales and marketing. I just liked the world that brands built around us. I just liked the idea of communication and creativity. And I remember when sitting in our common room, others would watch cricket and others would watch programming. I would be looking out for advertising. I just enjoyed it, and I think it was meant to be. So, as a matter of fact, the first year after my engineering, I was a marketing trainee with HCL HP in a division called Global Alliances, and
Okay,
it was a small but very tight knit unit within HCL HP, selling Canon bubble jet printers, Packard Bell home computers, creative multimedia kits. And as luck would
right.
have it, I also became the national sales executive for Toshiba laptops. And I saw both the retail envelope as well as, high stakes personal across the table selling, which then when I moved to the world of indirect distribution and mass media and creating pull through advertising, I think that, that experience of dealing with customers who come in with a checkbook and you have to convince them to be able to sell, I think that stood me in very good, it stood me very well throughout my career. I then went
Okay,
to do a master's in international business. I did an MBA from the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. As luck would have it, I did a summer training with Hindustan Lever and I got a pre-placement offer and I joined Hindustan Lever. And then I stayed with them for a long time before I shifted to other companies. But I have always been a dyed in the wool sort of marketeer. So
marketing.
I've never done anything
Okay,
except very full front on marketing across a variety of sectors, from consumer packaged goods to financial services, briefly in Alcobev, two stints in automotive, both two wheelers as well as cargo and commercial vehicles,
okay,
and very significantly a 4 year stint as head of marketing at Star Sports in a very
right.
formative era. So I've thoroughly enjoyed being a marketer.
That is evident. How did this love for reading and writing come? Because you're one of those few people who doesn't just talk about sales stories, but you delve very deep into what defines marketing and what are attitudes, consumer attitudes. And you have these extremely insightful posts which cover a whole range of issues with consumer connect. Where did that come from?
Well, for the record, before I get to the answer, I must say, of the many people who connect with me when I post something, you are by far the most disciplined observer in the sense that you always connect it to something else. Your commentary is very rich, and I enjoy our interactions when I post something, particularly on LinkedIn. So far as reading is concerned, I think it is a formative influence in my life. I grew up for the first many years in small town Rajasthan. My father was an IAS officer in the Rajasthan cadre. So we grew up in, I grew up in small towns, shifting schools every 2 years or so. And therefore, being an only child, this was back in the era when there was no television at home. There was very
Right.
little to do except to read. And also, I think coming from a family where books were highly prized, learning was very appreciated. There was always an orientation towards getting, you know, understanding of the world and the many mysteries it holds through books. And I remember in class seven when my grandfather gifted me the junior version of the Encyclopedia Britannica, it seemed to me that in those volumes, the entire world's knowledge had descended into my
Yeah,
bookshelf. It's
yeah,
today compared to what's accessible to people through AI and
it's
search, it
crazy.
was
Yeah,
nothing. But
yeah,
it just became fascinating for me living in places like Udaipur and Jodhpur and Bhilwara, that you could open a book and learn about Nova Scotia or Idaho or Germany in the Middle Ages. So I think I just had an early predilection for it, and I never let go. Writing, of course, happened much later when I finally developed some confidence, and I thought I was entitled to comment. But as I was joking with you earlier, my stamina is typically about 1200 to 1800 words after that, and that's largely opinion. I try
Okay.
to be committed to my writing, I try and research. But even now, I think I write quite indiscriminately on whatever catches my eye. But I think it's a good background to be preparing yourself for being a good marketer, irrespective of the industry you're in. People think, oh, you know what, I'm in the credit card business. What do I have to do with automotive? Or I'm in the automotive business. What do I have to do with Alcobev? The fact is, we are chasing the same customer wallet, and marketers fuss about marketing a lot more than consumers fuss about marketing. They fuss
Right.
about life, and life has many hooks, so instead of one magic bullet, we have to engage them like Velcro. There are many small hooks, and the more exposure you get, the more wide ranging your field of play, the greater the number of influences that have a bearing on your mind, the richer I feel will be the output that you have. And there is a old saying in my home state of Rajasthan that you can't put two saddles on one horse. But the mind is one such thing that you can put a million saddles on it, and it's still too few, because every time you actually discover something new, you read something new, it is in your mind's theater, it is in imagination that it grows, it is in the imagination and even your subconscious mind that it comes to fruition. So I think there is no limit to reading, and sky is really the lower limit.
That's amazing because what you just explained, which is that people think today that it is not so important to write because you put in some prompt and ChatGPT will generate it for you. But it is something that comes out of the collective and not necessarily something that originates in your mind. And I think a whole lot of what you write is very, very clearly clarified by what you yourself have understood, which is why it makes such a connection. Let me ask you one question about Visa. In India, credit cards, UPI has taken off because we can say it is very simple. The whole technology has been beautifully engineered to ensure that payment processes happen almost without friction. But during your time at Visa, what was one of the biggest marketing challenges that was evident?
Yes. Well, first of all, Visa is really uh, a superbly organized business. It's a fantastic brand, and it is really a very storied organization. Many people don't know that when D Hawk had the vision for a network to process payments, when he first thought of plastic, it began as a sort of a cooperative of banks. It began as an association. And it was very much later, back then, when it did happen finally. It was the then, till then, the largest IPO of the 21st century. And Visa Europe got absorbed even later than that. It's a very simple but viable business model. The four-party model, as it's called, has the retailer, the customer, the issuer, and the acceptance bank. And what Visa does is to facilitate the tango that happens between any two or all four, and takes a small fee called the interchange fee. And imagine that multiplied by the volume of commerce that happens, and it's a
Transaction,
very
yes.
sizable business. But in its
Yeah.
valuations, in the way the world sees it, it is correctly perceived to be a technology company, and it has withstood the test of time despite all the innovations that have happened. Visa has really remained market leader, and one part of that is just how brilliantly the network performs. But you see, what people don't realize is Visa, in many ways, is the central track for financial inclusion in the world. Of course, RuPay and before that, the UID Authority of India put the India FinStack on a equal, if not even better pedestal in terms of the volume. We are now the number one digital payments market in the world. But when I was at Visa, we were actively engaged with the UID authority and with Mr. Nandan Nilekani to see if we could make as many banking correspondents as there are mom and pop stores. Every panwala could accept payment. We had back then a joint venture with Monetize, where we were trying to do USSD payments through ordinary cell phones. I had even done a pro forma campaign called "Main bhi Angutha Chap" because of biometric identification,
Okay.
and we would have exploded that market as well in terms of just the volume and the number of people who came on board. Life took a different course, but I think the important thing about electronic money or spending in plastic is not the ease with which it happens, not the fact that it's frictionless, as much as the fact that it is a gateway to commerce for people. Imagine if you're a migrant worker living in one of the large metropolitan cities, and you were not banked, and if you did not have ease of remittance, you are petrified because everything that you are earning through your blood, sweat, and toil is lying under the mattress. I know of people in my consumer work who would put everything that they owned in a polythene pack and put scotch tape on their chest when they went to sleep because they weren't even assured that it's safe under the mattress.
Okay.
And therefore, I think just the inclusion into the banking economy, the multiplier effect that money has when it goes electronic, and of course, the fact that it's frictionless, it just adds huge value to everybody's life. And so I think I'm very proud and privileged to have served that period. One of the challenges that we were trying to grapple with was how simple nomenclature can create consumer habit. Back then, there were about 2.5 crore credit cards in the country, and there
Right.
were already about 18 to 20 crore debit cards because the government had, RBI had mandated that every savings account should come with a statutorily issued debit card, except that it was called ATM and debit card. And so people were in the habit of going to an ATM machine, withdrawing cash, and spending in cash. So it wasn't really putting them into the network in a viable manner. So we created a campaign called Dream to Advance, where we had an ideas forum, a seed funding, and we created a brilliant set of advertisements with BBDO. So Ajay Jhala, Josie Paul, Amit Sharma was the director. We made
Okay.
a set of films where people living in rural India, a person doesn't like the fact that his village is dark. He creates a cycle dynamo. Everything he needs to create that dynamo, he buys online. We taught people much before UPI, much before electronic wallets, in the era of only net banking, we taught people that you can use your debit card for online transactions. That was a huge, huge step forward. Then we also had a platform called Visa Bill Pay, which was for a host of ease of. This is much before the phone pays and
Right.
the Paytms of
Right.
the world. So I
Right.
got a very close introduction and a ringside view to both the pipelines of the economy, how money moves in the economy, and how making it move in a easier fashion can be a huge multiplier for the economy as a whole. So I was very blessed to be, and Antonio Lucio used to be our CEO, as also Kevin Burke was the CMO. Antonio later became CMO at Facebook and now is the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer at Hewlett Packard. So I had a great time there. I got the permission to do absolutely unique breakaway campaigns in India and also a lot of digital activity, which also back then was very pioneering. So I'm
Which,
always going
yeah.
to remember. Uh, I was there 2011, 12, and 13.
Okay. Okay. Those were pivotal years. And I'll just come back. I'll just make a few announcements and then come back to you, Shubhranshu.
Sure.
So I'm speaking to Shubhranshu Singh, and he spoke of his early growing up in Jaipur and how he grew up in the world of books, which I always find very fascinating that a person who is into hardcore sales is also interested in writing and reading about the field that he's in, which differentiates him a great deal from people who are ace sales people, which is a wonderful skill, which is a very necessary skill. But to understand what is really happening in the market and to take it forward from there. And I think he gave a wonderful illustration of how the visa system. predates UPI. And today we think that UPI has just come out of nowhere. But obviously, it is built on previous markets which have existed and beliefs which have existed. In the next segment, I'll be talking to him about how marketing has changed over the years and what are the things that he sees will change in future. So if you like whatever you've seen so far, please do share, like, and continue to watch, because as far as this goes, this episodes like this give you a ringside view into how careers are created, which most of us don't understand. Just happens one step at a time, and those steps are all important. And Shubhranshu detailing this just gives me the importance of why it is necessary to understand what it takes to build your career. So, Shubhranshu, the part about marketing, which is you've seen a huge amount of changes and disruptions. So, what do you think are the good and bad parts of what has happened so far?
Well, actually, I feel very blessed that I began life in Hindustan Lever, as I said, in the year 1999. I was batch of 1999. So I can say I worked across the last two millennia. But
Yeah, literally.
in the last 25 years, certainly, I think this has been the era of the rise of digital marketing. There is no, there are no two ways about it. I would go so far as to say that a digital tornado has hit the legacy world of marketing. Marketing, on the other hand, had got perfected in the legacy world for another about 50 to 100 years before that, principally in Western Europe and very significantly in North America. So there is a Nestle, Cadbury, Unilever, Diageo way. There is also a Procter and Gamble and American way of doing marketing, and it's quite clear that globally, the multinational spread of marketing happened as a part of a template which they perfected in their home markets, except that those home markets were relatively very affluent markets. And so when they came to Africa, to Asia, and to Latin America, they found the market structure was very different. Here was a market comprised of a humongous number of people, each having a little, against their markets, which was a humongous market, but of a very few people, each having a lot. So, it required a reorientation. Now, what has happened with the rise of marketing, and I've written about it, I call them Go Me Zon Talk as an illustrative acronym. So, it is Google, Meta, Amazon, TikTok. They have taken almost 60 to 70% of global ad revenues. We know last year, for the first year outside of China we don't understand that well, but outside of China, global ad revenues were about $1 trillion. It hit that mark for the first time,
Right.
of which about 650 to $700 billion was purely digital. So, and of that, about 250 billion dollars would have been Google, about 180 to $200 billion would have been Meta, and then Amazon, and then TikTok. And then there is a long tail with Snap and Twitter and the smaller players. Now, you don't need to be a PhD in marketing to know where the energy had gone. But where did the gain loss was very simple. They took that money out of legacy media. So magazines suffered, newspapers suffered, television companies suffered, outdoor companies suffered, and so on. Now, what happens is people don't realize that marketing rides on advertising, and advertising is a value exchange, which means in lieu of putting up with advertising, a consumer gets subsidized content or free content. And therefore, as the wind got sucked out of legacy media, naturally their ability to create great content also started shrinking. As against that, there was a dam of money that burst into the digital domains. And instead of really living up to the occasion and creating fabulous content, they all started templatizing it. And in fact, today
Right.
we know large parts of the digital world, most specifically Meta, they're saying we don't need the human in the loop. We will go end to end. Just give us your brief, give us your metrics, give us your idea. Everything can be created synthetically and plotted all the way. That's great. That's fab in terms of innovation. But will that put the idea business in risk? Because at the end of the day, we are about creating emotion, we are about creating big ideas. And the governing principle of advertising leading to brand was creation of memory. The more you see, the more you get, the more you get, the more you see. We make the familiar seem new. We make the new seem familiar time and again, time and again, time and again. After that, you start owning a part of the mind map of a consumer. So when I think of cold drinks, I think of Coca Cola, Fanta, Sprite, whatever, four, five, six. That's my consideration set. And then whatever is recency, second moment of truth, great deal wins me over. So from there, you have got to a business of say 6 billion or 7 billion people on the planet, each having a lit piece of glass, which they call their mobile phone, in their hands. And before the mind can think, the finger is thinking. So you don't have anymore the luxury of being able to buy your way to a mass audience. There is very little mass audience traction left in the world. Most of it has become one to one, peer to peer, platform oriented, algorithmically filtered. And so big ideas are compromised, and big dramatic narratives are compromised as well. How can you use Instagram to tell the story that Leo Tolstoy told in War and Peace? It's not possible. How can you go on to Google search and discover the depths of Indian philosophy? So everything is becoming pressy, short form, capsule, quick and easy. Uh, People see a YouTube video of an author speaking about his book and they think they've read the book. So we are living in a world where the blurb is becoming the main story, you see. And this is not very good from a long term brand health point of view. It's great from an identification of cohort point of view. I know what Venu likes, I know what people like Venu like. I know Venu hasn't been to a pizzeria in 3 months. I will ping him, he will click, he will order. All of that is good. But how do I introduce the love of spaghetti instead of pizza in Venu's mind? How do I
Right.
tell him he should go for a Gujarati thali? For that, I need Venu in new mind states. I need Venu to be wildly explorative. I need you to be leaning in. If everything is dependent on what you already like or what people like you like or feeding what you did last, which is why today on things like YouTube, and I am in awe of YouTube. It's a great platform, but you don't even need to consume their content. Just lingering on it will make them show you more of something of that sort. So the power to create, the power to populate ideas, the power to nurture things has gone out of marketing into tech and platforms. And again, in one of the articles that I wrote recently, I said, therefore, marketing is becoming more and more like a potted plant. Campaigns
Yeah.
last so long as budgets last. You have to keep watering it. The day you stop watering it, it begins to shrivel and die. Versus earlier, in the era between the two world wars and thereafter in India as well, when we built with a single medium like Doordarshan or Times of India or Hindustan Times or Outdoors, you had a brand that perhaps couldn't do magic 24 by 7, but it stayed in your mind and it had the same meaning to many, many crores of people. And they became iconic brands because they had longevity, they had legacy. Uh, Today, what happens is everything comes and goes much faster. And I have called it the three phases. What? So what? And then when they get the implication, now what? And then there is panic. So you see the number of frequency of changes of campaign, sometimes left, sometimes right. You are just not creating enough weight behind brands and campaigns to be value adders. If I told you, Venu, I am a funny guy, I am obliged to then tell you a joke and make you laugh. If
Yeah.
throughout this podcast I keep telling you, oh, I'm a very funny chap, I'm a very funny chap, after a while you'll think I'm an idiot, who keeps saying this, but instead of making me laugh, he's irritating me. Brands have something similar. It's easy to say social media. If you're sitting in a pub with two friends and it's a social environment, and I suddenly pull a chair and sit next to you and start telling you about mosquito coils, I'm sure you will kick me away. But we are happy to do
Yeah.
that as marketeers online. That's exactly what's happening
Yeah.
with invasive advertising. I am,
Right.
during Navratra, I'm listening to some prayer on YouTube. Suddenly, in the middle of those prayers, suddenly some ad is coming for something completely unrelated. So, uh, this sensibility is a very important thing for marketing. We should not lose it.
That's true. So this whole interaction, which used to be one to many, where the entire nation gathered around a point when there was Ramayana and Mahabharata, to these extremely niche targeting of three people within a family having completely different fields.
Yeah,
It means that there is no unity even in terms of what they think as a family, a unit. Let's say a group of friends who are meeting together after some time, it then tends to be that three of them have three different, let's say, shades of pop stars in mind. So, what is going to happen to the shared experience? And as a result, how do you even begin to create that connection over time? Because another thing, like you have banks and everything else, you require the compounding to happen. But if the deposits are few and far between, how will compounding happen?
absolutely. I think you've hit the nail. Let me be disciplined about this answer. Otherwise, I can keep talking for hours on this subject. First of all, as you correctly said, we are not in the business of marketing because we are artists. If we are artists, we should be in the business of creating art. Advertising and marketing is very much a commercial endeavor. Its endeavor is to grow markets, but before that, it needs to grow meaning. From meanings come markets. From markets comes money. So I think it's firstly about the creation of meaning. And as you correctly said, a brand in the business sense is a compounding financial asset. Yeah, you once you break the inertia, once you occupy minds of consumers, future sales are accelerating, the future effort, the friction to get another sale goes down, and every penny that you spend should be traceable as awareness, consideration, propensity to consume, recommendatory power, etc. If we have not done that, it is a failing of the marketing tribe that they have lost confidence and not been able to evidence that. Now, coming to your point about the one to many and the collectivism that is important, let me not seem like both of us, being old men, are basking, in nostalgia. It is not as if the new has nothing great in it. There is fantastic accessibility that has happened thanks to the internet. There is phenomenal amounts of knowledge that is now at your fingertips. There is also the chance for people to break through gates where they had no hope in hell in the past. Today, if you have a phone, you are a walking, talking studio, editor, influencer, and whatnot. So the
Right.
world has really become richer, more accessible, much more rewarding than before. Having said that, that is not the core purpose of building a brand. The core purpose of building the brand is as a vessel for meaning. And if I meet you one day being a thoroughly funny chap, next day being thoroughly depressed and crying all the time, third day I come to you and talk only about playing football, fourth day I send you a message about me cooking, you may think I am a versatile chap, but I will own no part of your mind, because every time you meet me,
Right.
you are discovering me in a complete. That was not brand. Brand is the creation of memory. Branding is the exercise of creating positive prejudice. And the only way you can create positive prejudice is by being consistent. Hopefully, by being a first mover, which is the best thing you can get. After that, being consistent. Yeah. People, if I am shown on television every single day, even if I say Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, but I do it 365 days, I can tell you people will seek my autograph at an airport, because familiarity will make me something aspirational. And I can tell you there are many television stations and anchors who are doing worse than Humpty Dumpty and yet are famous. So branding is about larger than life. Branding is about always the same. Branding is about consistency. And then you delight people by creating twists and turns and, myriad. So it is kaleidoscopic, but the parts are the same. That is branding. Now, the problem with the digital world is, firstly, the power is not with the guy who wants to send the message. The power is with the platform. And when I
Right.
say this is for you, this feed is for you, it means it is as we desire it for you. So there is a commercial linkage there immediately. And these are not innocent occurrences. As I've told you, the blue links economy on Google search itself is about $150 billion. $150 billion.
Yes.
$1 billion is 100 crore dollars. You can do the math, how many zeros there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, the algorithmic filtering is not for customer experience. It is to drive better returns for the platform owner. There is absolutely not an iota of doubt in that. So, in my family, my wife, my son, and I, all three have Netflix. Go and see what is being recommended. It's completely different. So even if I have two phones and I create two Netflix downloads on two
Accounts.
phones, and after 30 days, the two phones will have different thumbnails, because one I may take to work, other one may be at home. Depending on what I
Right.
peruse, a phone is picking up more than 60, sometimes upwards of 200 signals, and we pay no heed to privacy. Accept all, accept all, accept all. There's nothing free. So accept all means now there are a million eyes watching you all the time. And
Right.
so the algorithmic model is simple. They give with 100 hands and they take with 1,000 hands. So basically, you are living in a conditioned bubble, which who people like Ali Pariser and all have called the filter bubble. You are living in an echo chamber. You are seeing more and more of what you have already preferred. That is maybe comforting if you don't have the need for newness. But from the seller's side, from the brand owner's side, it is threatening, because the power is no longer with me. For my own product, for my own narrative, for my own advertising, I am reliant on tech platforms and algorithmic filters to carry my message. And that concerns me at one level.
It does. But I love what you just said about brands being, you know, suffused with meaning. And that ultimately is the differentiator. And the concept of positive prejudice, because it means that that's an oxymoron, but I think it works beautifully as understanding what that prejudice is all about. So do you think that the search for meaning, especially when it's controlled by platforms who are not bothered about meaning, they're only worried about access and keeping people in for engaging them in whichever way, as long as they're making money, it's fine. So, this whole search for meaning, where do you think it begins? Does it begin with an experience, or does it begin with something consistent over time? Because
Yeah, that,
I will have to take something out of it, isn't it? A message is beamed to me, and then it has to mean something in the context of my life.
that's a very,
So,
again, a very powerful area to, in at least explore and to introspect as professional marketers. One thing I can tell you, Venu, I wrote about this in an op-ed piece in the Mint recently. I think there is going to be at least a credible renaissance in old world marketing, particularly public relations, origination of content, and activations. Because you know how they say, to without erasing a line, how do you make it small, is by drawing a bigger line next to it. I think the AI phenomenon is going to set the cat amongst the pigeons where the social platforms and search is concerned. Because I can tell you, for my son and his generation, They do not go to Google to search. They go directly to their whatever Meta or
Any of,
Chat
yeah,
GPT. So basically, they are not even wanting to do the exertion of going and doing the secondary stage of finding. They want ready-made answers. Now, what that is going to do is once everything, and you're dealing with somebody as AI who has read everything and remembers everything, and then you're in a mixer grinder, and you're basically pureeing it, and the puree is getting more and more diluted unless there is something new in the hopper. So
right.
basically, if I discover, and it's fabulous how it does that, today we are doing this podcast, you will broadcast it and go a little later and it'll find a quote on what you said and what I said, and it'll be able to retrieve it like that. So the onus is on us to do new things. The onus is on us to stretch the envelope where discourse is concerned. The onus is on us to find new purpose. And I think so second part, first is I think we will step outside of the digital boundaries. Say
Yeah,
influencer content. I am a very big backer of influencer content. I think it's credible. I think it's relatable. It's cheaper. It's faster. It's always on. It has a long tail. But after you've made 30 videos, 30 influencers have spoken about the fresh lime fragrance of a soap. Frankly, nobody's going to the 31st, 32nd, and the 33rd, right? But
yeah,
for me to have a free sample coming home, or for me to see the foam at a supermarket, or for me to be part of an Antakshari which is run by the soap as a benefactor, or whatever, the number of
yeah,
instances where I encounter them outside of the boundaries of digital is delightful, because finally I'm seeing something new. So I think there will be a renaissance of some parts of good old marketing, the way good old marketing used to be done. Secondly, I think markets in India and Asia have a much better shot at it than markets in the West. Because when their legacy media collapsed, it really collapsed. This year I was at Cannes, um, the World Media Group and CNN had done a roundtable, and it was surprising who's advertising on news. In the UK, the majority of advertisement revenue on news is from this call 1-800 number and order now. Look at this knife, how well it cuts, that sort of a thing. So
okay,
basically, all serious advertising has disappeared from news. And now, what does that tell you? Advertising is the bridge between buyer and seller. Advertising is the language of capitalism. Advertising also is the basis for democracy. When we have elections, we are in a high activation mode for campaigning. Campaigning is nothing but marketing one versus the other. Instead of spending money, you cast your vote. Now, if news is going to get, look at this knife, how well it cuts, news is not going to be great news because that's what is feeding it. And so basically,
right.
everything is going to shrink. It is a threat to capitalism. It is a threat to great content. It is a threat to democracy. Therefore, advertising must thrive. And why I say Asia and India will do better is, in our case, contrast was less important than connection. We are not about launching with great fanfare and positioning a product. We are about decoding what the product is all about. In the Western template, starting with Sigmund Freud, Ed Bernays, Jung, the psychology part of advertising was way more important. And then they hushed up about it because people came and said, oh, you're manipulating and all. So they've kept quiet about it. But basically it was, to a degree, a psychological manipulation for creating yourself by buying brands, right? But in India, sociology of branding has always been more important. If I'm a rich man, I ought to get a Mercedes or a BMW because that's what all the Sethjis do. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
an American guy will say, no, 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 I want a Porsche 911 or I want a vintage Jeep, even though I'm a billionaire, because that's what I want to do. That's what I am for. So this individualism, standing apart, being differentiated is a Western metaphor. India was always about cultural meaning, collectivism, harmony. अगर पैसा कमा भी लिया है तो Mercedes लो, हर कोई लेता है. So we subscribe much more easily. And so on the
yeah,
receiving side, there is much greater chance for still great collective brands to be built in India. It's a good chance. In my father's
Okay,
generation or in
so
my generation, sorry, just
uh,
one,
no, no, yeah,
how
please.
I mean, I travel across the world very frequently. I meet people from advertising very frequently. I can tell you, advertising jingles and concepts don't travel into language there at all now. I mean, practically none at
Right,
all. Yeah, I mean, in America, there's a celebration for Super Bowl Sunday, and some advertising is celebrated from time to time, but more for causes. But in India, in my generation, my father's generation, if you said tandurusti ki raksha, everybody will end by saying karta hai life boy. So advertising jingles, they are in our lullabies, they are in our tattoos. India has a great appetite for marketing and advertising, and it's a part of our
right.
culture. And that I think digital can't take away very quickly.
It is. So, anyone who's getting into the ground floor of advertising, of marketing today, what is the road ahead and where does the horizon kind of point towards?
No, I am a great optimist for marketing careers. I have 26 years, voluntarily stayed marketing, resisted the pull of P&L management. I've double hatted on many occasions through significant chunks of my career, but heart of hearts, I love marketing, I love creativity, I love speaking to consumers everywhere. And I am an optimist that when everything is taken over by machines, marketing will be probably the last human in the loop. Why? Because I cannot give you a goosebump by algorithmic prompt. It's not possible.
True.
I can know, Venu, today, when is the last time you touched your WhatsApp? When is the last time you went to your banking app? How many hours of screen time you had yesterday? When is the last time you ordered grocery? Everything about you I can know. But even with all of that, I cannot
I don't know.
give you a goosebump. There is artificial intelligence. Yes, by God, there is artificial intelligence. But by God, there is no artificial imagination even now. And that's our safe harbor.
Yeah.
Because look at how the subconscious mind works. If I talk to you about yawning, just my mentioning yawning 2 or 3 times can prompt a yawn.
Yeah.
But I cannot do that via a scientific coded program or by sprinkling some chemical in the air. It has to happen. My words will travel to your mind and trigger a response. And if I tell you, a smell of something that your mother would cook in your childhood, or a storybook that you had read when you were in class 5 can make you cry, or listening to a song when you had your first heartbreak can make you, depressed, or drinking the same whiskey that you drank when you got your first job can make you feel young again. Now, these are things you cannot do algorithmically, you cannot do via artificial intelligence. These are deeply seated, these are, in a sense, reflexive responses. uh, the small muscle erector pili, which creates the goosebump, they don't know, they still don't have a viable explanation for why that happens. They have all kinds of biological gook saying, oh, it's from, temperature difference makes it's a reflexive risk. But why do we tear up?
Yeah.
Why does an audience decide this is a time to give them a cheer? Why do they spontaneously break into applause? There is no algorithm that can predict it. And that's the
And
beauty of
I can,
marketing.
you're right. And I can see it even in the algorithm desperately trying to replicate what people like. For example, over the last few days on Instagram, if I tended to dwell on this video of this baby talk with a dog, the dog barks and the baby responds and then says, okay, keep quiet. The first time I watch it, and then I discovered that there are six which are sent my way in the next 10 minutes. After which I'm not interested in that anymore. This
Exactly.
very repetition is bringing in fatigue. So, this
Correct.
whole algorithmic funneling towards telling you that I understand your interest, so I'll send more your way, is that diminishing marginal utility in terms of interest.
I find I would I would catch your phrase and give it a twist. I think it follows the law of marginal futility actually, because after 20 times I'm like, I mean, yes, I was interested in checking out London because I happen to be going there, but you know what,
Yeah.
I'm back in Jaipur. I'm not interested in your London prompts anymore. you know of course they can pick up where you are, and the location is also fed,
Yes.
so they're very
Yes.
intelligent, very sophisticated systems. But I
Right.
still feel, so coming back to the marketing piece, I think marketeers need to stay in proudly as social scientists. Let's not try and become data scientists.
Yes.
Data is important, but interpretive social sciences, psychology, sociology, anthropology, history, music, culture studies, very, very important. Secondly, shut up, listen more, look more. Thirdly, read more, be interested in
Yes.
everything. Piyush Pandey passed away recently. I've known him.
That was sad. Yeah. Very sad.
I've known
Yes.
him for a large part of my life. I was extraordinarily close to him. He took me to Jaipur for the unveil of his book. That was our hometown. He was my school senior. One of the things he used to say was, if you don't travel by bus, if you don't travel by train, if you're not eating at dhabas, if you're not watching really grade C movies, you're not catching the vibe of India. If you're sitting in Nariman Point, if you're traveling every place by plane, if you're earning fat salaries, you will not catch the language, the bhasha. And if you don't catch the bhasha, what you create will seem like, unnecessary. So my recommendation to people who join marketing is, don't look to get rich in a hurry. It's not going to happen anyways. Be curious,
Yeah.
enjoy what you create, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just most weekdays we have help at home who fixes a breakfast, but every once in a while when I make my own omelette, even though it comes out completely broken and rubbish, I love it. I just like eating it better because I think I did a fab job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're interested, if you love the joy of creation, you will like what you created. Be proud of it. Don't be on a back
Yeah.
foot. There is a real
And it's
danger of
crazy
marketers.
how very true. This was very strange to me when I had gone to London and I was traveling to Bristol with a doctor who originally was from Bangalore.
Uh-huh.
And then while we were traveling, he turned the radio station to Gurbani. So I said, you don't even understand this whole. He says, no, but it's India. And if I can get even a little bit of India while I'm talking of nearly 25, 30 years ago. So this connection and meaning comes from childhood, I think, and then kind of delves into all your social, whatever it is, no matter how much you live digitally, you still live a substantial portion of your life offline as well. And
Absolutely.
those tend to define how you think and what are the various aspects of life that you have to retain some control on and understand better. That's exactly where I think what you just said resonates so well, that you're never going to be 100% happy with anything that is purely digital, because I know you can people talk of binge watching. Within 5 days you can stop all binge watching and you don't care if you don't see the television for the next 1 month. So these
Correct.
experience tend to outgrow, but you can have a conversation with your friends that lasts for a holiday or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever, and
Correct.
you'll still come back extremely refreshed. So I think
Correct.
that
And
human connection is never going to disappear.
now also, if you see,
Huh.
every era has its own governing logic. The era of the industrial age was about, scaling up efficiency. The
Right.
era of information age was about scale. Algorithmic era is about self-adaptive and self-learning systems. But I think now we are going to be in the post digital and the AI or the cloud capital era. Yanis Varoufakis calls it the cloud capital era, where I think it is going to be about connections, the number of connections that are, otherwise, how is one going to project a reality? Because it is being pulled together from various things which are in the mix. They're just feeding and then on pattern making sense of that. So I think it is about systems that adapt, learn, iterate, and scale up all the time, even when you're sleeping. Your phone doesn't go to sleep. So the point is, there is an arrow of progress. If today I went to a hospital after, say, I had a heart attack, God forbid, I am 100% guaranteed of better medical care than 100 years ago. If
Right.
I am on a plane today, I am 100% on average safer in that plane than I was 50 years ago.
True.
If I am using a computer, 100% it is better than the computer I used 20 years ago. But if I see a film, if I read a novel, if I see an advertisement, who is to certify that it is even parity, forget 100% better than what happened 50 years ago? I may think Lawrence of Arabia was the best movie ever made. You may think Mughal Azam deserved that crown. It is each to his own. So
Yeah.
in the creative arts, there is no arrow of progress. You can say, yeah,
So
yeah,
true.
I'm able to you know get better insights because I know how many times Venu got up to go to the loo last night, so I must tell him to have low sugar diet. But he's not listening to you. What will you do? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So just foreknowledge does not mean better output. And that's the beauty of marketing. It is our responsibility, therefore, to see it as art, to nurture it like art, to love it like art, and to be artists. A financialization of marketing is a disgusting thing, in my opinion. It is ruining art,
True.
it is ruining spirit, and it's just making you, therefore, a grade B version of some CFO assistant or somebody under the thumb of procurement. You're not creating culture, you're not creating memory, you're not creating art, you're not creating icons, you're not creating legacy. You're just doing a 9 to 5 job,
Absolutely.
might as well be in insurance or whatever. I mean, what's the point of being marketing?
And in a sense, Shubhranshu, I think one last bit which I saw the Van Gogh immersive, and I thought it was an amazing instance of being able to take what was an isolated or a very private experience within a very organized space into something that just washes over you. But I was trying to see if that can be, it brings the painting closer, but do you understand Van Gogh better? I'm not sure. Okay, it's a very unique experience, but where does it go from there is not something that I'm very clear about. So
Yeah.
we
No, I agree. But Venu, one thing is there. I mean, this is my. I was at the Art and Science Museum in Singapore earlier in the year,
ah
and they have this VR lab kind of a thing, right, where you can do one of the. I do think augmented reality and virtual reality, both. To that extent, I think Zuckerberg's push for metaverse, though it happened prematurely, and I think they shrank away from it. I think the world has lived with this malleable product called video for a very long time, and hats off to video. It has survived the cinema screen. It has gone to television, then cable, then OTT, phones. Video is the currency everywhere. But I think we need depth, we need texture, we need new somatic kind of experiences, tactile, flavor, engaging all the senses. So I do think that I remember I was a kid when the first 3D movie, Chota, whatever it was called, I
yeah,
forget. It was
Chota Chetan.
Chota
Yeah,
Chetan. Yeah. And I was,
yeah,
I was amazed, wearing those
yeah.
specs.
He holds that thing out at you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was just
Crazy.
amazing. And we know when we go to a Universal or a Disney that this roller coaster is a simulation. It's not going to kill you, but you feel scared. You jump out of your skin. So I think
Yeah, yeah,
marketing needs new tools. It needs new impulses. It needs new kind of sensorials. But having said that, the beauty of just a tale that has survived for 3,000 years in our legacy with a shadow puppet. There's something to be said about that. Yeah? It doesn't need virtual reality. It's happening inside your head. The best virtual reality machine is between our two
Is right
ears.
inside here.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. On that note, Shubhranshu, thank you so much for coming on board. It's been a blast talking to you because I it's wonderful how conversations just tend to keep
Yeah.
going without
We,
your
we should
really
do
being aware
this
of that.
with or without the recording. We should do it more often. Thank you, Venu. All the very
Anytime.
best to you and
Yeah.
strength to you. You're doing a great job, to you and your team.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Pleasure.